All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Grizzly's Cave. This is Grizzly Andrew, and before I get to the topic for this episode, I do want to remind the wrestling fans of the next NAW wrestling event. NAW stands for New Age Wrestling Entertainment. It will be this Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Nebo Community Center in Nebo, Kentucky. Doors will open at 6 p.m. Ticket prices are as follows. General admission is $8 for anybody ages 13 and up, free for anybody ages 0 to 5, and $5 for anybody ages 6 to 12. It is a family friendly promotion. I promise, folks, you will not be disappointed, and concessions will be available. So, again, I'm going to do another episode where I live stream it on TikTok, and it's also going to be recorded via audio as well for my 6 platforms. And my platforms are Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Patreon, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. If you would like to make a donation to Grizzly's Cave, my cash tag on Cashapp is the $ grizzlywildman. My Venmo is Andrew-McGregor-2, and my PayPal is Andrew McGregor. Any donations would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you would be interested in sponsoring Grizzly's Cave, you can email me at grizzliescave@yahoo.com. Let me get these microphones a little bit closer here. There we go. All right, so this is another one of these top 10 lists that showed up on my Facebook, and I screenshotted it, and I just thought I'd talk about it. And if any of my wrestling friends happen to be on that want to join, they are more than welcome to come on the show. I'd be more than happy to have them. So today's topic is going to be the top 10 400 plus pound workers of all time. So we're going to start. I'm going to have to squeeze over here to my left. Number 10 is going to be the One Man Gang. And if you also watch Golden Era WWF, he was also known as the African Dream Akeem. This guy was huge. He was about 6'9", probably about 450, 460 pounds, give or take. And no, he didn't move as nimble as the late Yokozuna or even as Vader, which we'll talk about these guys later. But the guy could move. And one thing that he did, actually, there's a few things that he did back during his time working for Vince. If you get a chance, look up WrestleMania 5. It was a tag team match. It was the Twin Towers. I see my friend Goblin joined the live. I'm going to send him an invite. What is up, Goblin? How you doing, buddy?
Grizz, what's good, bro? What's good?
Oh, not much. Just enjoying my staycation this week. So I thought this would be a good time to do a podcast episode.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So, anyways, today's topic, it's another screenshot that come across my Facebook, and I was like, I've got to do a show on this. So just got started with it. It's the top 10 400 plus pound workers of all time, and the One Man Gang is starting us off at number 10.
Okay. Well, I mean for me anyways, I the word worker in there I think is going to carry a lot of weight, or at least should carry a lot of weight, cuz there's a lot of I mean, depending on your definition of success, there's a lot of successful 400 pounders in there, but not all of them worked.
Right.
So yeah, you said you're so you're just starting. You said number 10.
Yes, sir. Number 10. And right
Is that what
before,
is that what you did?
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Um,
No, I'm sorry. I think there's just there was a little bit of a delay, but no, go ahead.
but right before I sent the invite, I'd mentioned about his time working for Vince back in the late '80s to early '90s, and I had actually started to talk about a tag team match back when he was Akeem. I gotta say that was one of the worst, one of Vince's many terrible gimmicks, but at the time it was funny. Seeing him try to see a 450 pounder just dance around or try to dance, to the Jive Soul Bro entrance theme. I mean, it was comedy, but in regards to work rate, I mean, no, he didn't move like Vader or Yoko. God rest both of their souls, but he could work. And I know he had success when he worked for Watts down in Mid South prior to working for Vince, and he did find some success when he went to WCW. I know he had a brief run as the United States champion, but the tag team match that I was starting to talk about, it happened at WrestleMania 5 back in 1989 at Trump Plaza, and it was the second match. The Twin Towers, the Big Boss Man and Akeem versus the Rockers, who we all know as Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. And Akeem, one man gang, whatever you want to call him, he really he lived up to the gimmick. And I know he would start to kind of jive around or whatever and or dance around, and you could hear you could hear Gorilla Monsoon saying, "This is Mr. Moves right here." But there was one spot in that match. It was towards the end. It was when the Rockers were making their comeback, and Shawn did a duck under for one clothesline, and then Akeem just knocked the living hell out of him with another clothesline. And you hear Monsoon saying, "Wow, what a shot!" And then Jesse Ventura said, "I think he irritated Akeem." And then Monsoon said, "He certainly did. He just decapitated him." And he had the 450 splash or 747 splash, whatever you wanted to call him, and but for a big guy, he could move. And like I said, he was about 6'8", 6'9", about 450, give or take. But anyways, with that said, do you have anything you'd like to add on the one man gang?
No, I think as a kid I never. Well, again, I was a kid. I didn't I didn't put two and two together that Akeem was the one man gang. I think my earliest memories of him was the one man gang. I
Hmm.
believe. Uh, Again, I don't want to be quoted, but I believe Gang and Hogan had a Saturday night's main event match. I believe, right?
They
Um,
they did. I did not. I have not watched that match. The only time I've seen Hogan and Gang go at it was in WCW when they had it was the very first Monday Nitro, and I believe they main evented that
sure.
one. It was
Yeah.
well, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was Big Boss. Maybe it was Big Bubba Rogers. But I want to say it was the one man gang that he main evented a Nitro with. But
See, and I don't think Bubba was 400, but man, if Bubba wouldn't be number one on the list, or maybe number two on the list for top 10 workers of, I mean, just of any size, right? Anything 350 plus, uh, uh, Bubba is number one. I mean, that guy was just, I think, unbelievably agile and fast. If you look back at early big boss man or even babyface boss man, he was the way he hit the ropes. It was just so fast. It was I love I've grown to appreciate boss man, Big Bubba, however whatever you want to the guardian angel, whatever you want to call him.
yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
But yeah, but on topic, yeah, I was a fan of Akeem, one man gang. Yeah, he was he's deserving of this list.
so Moving on to number 9. This one really shocked me, and number 9 was Big Daddy V. The late Nelson Frazier was probably more well known as Mabel when he was part of Men on a Mission, and then eventually Viscera when he was part of the ministry with The Undertaker back during his cult leader gimmick. And Big Daddy V, um, hmm,
Yes.
I'm trying not
Yes.
I'm trying not to talk ill of the dead, but I know especially when he got his run in '95 when they were starting to push him as a monster heel, he was dangerous to work with. Kevin Nash has went on record and mentioned that. The Undertaker has went on record and mentioned that. And for those of you that may remember back in '95 towards the end when the Undertaker was wearing this mask that looked like Phantom of the Opera-ish type, it was actually a face guard that he had to wear due to an injury that he sustained from Big Daddy V. Now, could he go? Yes. Yes, he could go. For a 400 plus pounder, the man could go. And he, it wasn't insecurities. It was kind of a spin wheel kick he would try to do, but he never jumped up. He just kind of rolled through and would hit his
Hmm.
opponents with it. Now, there was one aerial move I saw this man do, and it was at the '94 Survivor Series. It was a 5-on-5 elimination match. It was the team Guts and Glory, which was captained by Lex Luger. It had Luger, Adam Bomb, Mabel, and the Smoking Guns, and they took on the $1 Million Team, which had Tatanka, Bam Bam, King Kong Bundy, and the Heavenly Bodies. There was one spot in that match that Mabel did. He went up to the second rope, and the way that he was positioned, you would think he was about to do a Vader bomb. But let's see, it was with Dr. Tom Pritchard. And he goes from that position like he's about to do a Vader bomb, and he like jumps and spins it into a cross body and lands on Pritchard to get the 3 count to eliminate him. And you could hear the crowd going, "Oh!" And I mean, it actually looked pretty good. And I mean, it was devastating because I think at that time he was over 500 pounds, but I don't know. I got to kind of disagree with him being on this list at all. And like I said, I'm not speaking ill of him. I'm not saying that he couldn't do some stuff, but I don't think he should be on the top 10. But what say you?
I agree. Going walk into my premise of when I said that workers and the word working was going to be a lot of heavy lifting. The first person I was gonna mention was Viscera Mabel. I was like, because he was not a good worker, but he had success, and he had success. He was Vince McMahon. Honestly, Vince McMahon loved him, right? Like Vince kept him around for a long time. He gave him many opportunities. I did actually enjoy his Big Daddy V run in ECW. I did like it. Um, but yeah, I he doesn't belong on the list. And again, no shade. If anything, he would be anywhere in that 10, 11 through 15 probably. But yeah, I would have him just off the list. I also believe, and not to, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he also had like a possibly a second rope leg drop as well, or something like that. Did he not, or something similar?
Hmm. Now, I don't recall seeing that. Now he would run the ropes and do a leg drop. He would run the ropes and do. I saw him do that to Owen Hart. I know he would run the ropes and do an elbow drop or a splash, but I don't remember ever seeing him do a second rope leg drop. Now,
Yeah, I may be mistaken. I may be mistaken. Again, it could be just something I thought I saw. Um, but yeah, I think what you brought up, the the injuries to Kevin Nash and the Undertaker, I think they really they got to come into a way, right? They got to come into the equation. And yeah, unfortunately, I for me he wouldn't be on my list.
no, and not knocking whoever made this list, because it's a good subject topic, for the show. But I don't think he should have been on here. by no means. Now you mentioned you like Big Daddy V. Now, I thought it for the time being, I thought it was good, especially because they had him on the ECW brand, and they weren't really. I guess if you want to count Mark Henry, they didn't really have much on Monster Heels or anything at that point, and he was wrecking through the Boogeyman at the time, and he even eliminated Kane in an '07 Survivor Series elimination match. I mean, so I think Vince was really wanting to try again with him in some capacity, but it was just a short-lived run, unfortunately. Some Vince just loves big guys, you know. Now back in the day, the bigger guys were attractions, they drew. Um, Hang on. Hold on just a second, Panda. Let me send him a
It, it, it's it's funny you mentioned that Survivor Series squad, man. For both teams, if both teams weren't a motley crew of 1990 of 1994 95 WWF wrestling, like, man,
he he
that
he would have been a better fit for the golden era just because with all the big heavy guys that they had. And my mama, God rest her soul, she would say, "Those were the comedy years, Andy, and they looked like wrestlers back then." Because you had guys like
I mean, it would have been
Earthquake.
awesome.
Panda, how have you
You're
been,
right. I
buddy?
mean, think about Big King Kong Bundy, right? One man gang, Big Daddy from the UK, and like Big Daddy V, all in the ring. You know what Vince says. Look at all that beef. Well, I mean, you know, I guess look at all that pork. I don't know something.
yeah. And you know what? I mean, as a big, I mean, you can't tell me that he does not fit the archetype of 80s Hulk Hogan mega villain to overcome. And I mean, he would fit the exact mold of the Earthquake, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or King Kong Bundy, or any of those monster heels that Hogan conquered in the 80s. Like, he. I mean, even if you go early 80s, late 70s territory days, right? I mean, hey, Plowboy Frazier, Haystacks Calhoun, those guys, Uncle Elmer. I know, you know what I mean. So yeah, I
Uncle
think
Elmer. That's a
I
deep cut
think
right there.
yeah, I think Viscera would definitely he would be a great attraction.
Yeah, I would agree, and he definitely could work better than you mentioned Haystacks Calhoun, but don't forget Giant Haystacks or the small
Hmm.
run he had in WCW as Loch Ness, or as Dusty Rhodes will say, "Is it the Loch Ness monster, baby?" you know. But yeah, this next one really surprised me. I really expected him to be. Hang on just a second here. I forgot to hit Do Not Disturb. I was getting a phone call. Had to hit the red, hit the decline. But anyways, looks like number 8 is going to be the Big Show. Now this one surprised me. I really expected him to be a lot higher up on the list, and but with that being said, before I continue, Panda, it's good to see you, buddy, and welcome to Grizzly's Cave. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to see you, bro. You looking good, bro. You looking jacked.
I appreciate that. I decided I went basically just out of the blue decided to shave the beard off and stuff and all that. I ain't really lost any weight. I still walk quite a bit and still do my workouts, but I'm still sitting at about 240, 242. So, but I see what you commented, and thank you for sharing that as well. So, many
No
thanks.
problem.
So my take on the Big Show, I personally think he should be, number 1 or number 2 at least. I mean, how many 7-footers that weigh over 400 pounds can do top rope drop kicks and move like a light heavyweight? And
And this is the top like big guys of all time.
according to this
Mm.
list, yes, sir. That's that.
Wow.
I don't remember the source. I just happened to see the screenshot on my Facebook news feed, so just like my last episode, I screenshotted it and thought it'd be something good to talk about. So
And what number is the Big Show on the in this list?
number 8.
Oh, what's up, Ricky? Huh? Number 8.
Yes, sir.
I mean, man, who's above him? Is it just like,
So
you don't have to say it, but I mean, like, he definitely deserves like the accolade. I mean, but does he have like that presence and aura of a big Van Vader, or that like that wondrous look that people get when you saw Andre the Giant?
well, if you think back to WCW when he got his start in the business, I mean, he had that aura. I mean, he wasn't, big and heavy like Andre was, but he was tall, he was very jacked and stuff, and he was scary. I remember when he debuted, I was 9 years old, and I mean that every time I saw this guy walk out, this is back when I was still a Hulkamaniac. And of course, when you see him snap Hulk Hogan's neck and Hogan's wearing a brace and stuff, and I guess that worked for him, brother. But he was a big, scary guy, and he just continued to get even
Hmm.
more scary as the years went on. You know, but the only thing that kind of hurt him is, and I know Vince reprimanded him about this when he shortly went to the WWF. Vince would tell him he needed to work like a giant. Damn it. He was letting guys slam him. He was letting Scott Steiner suplex him and stuff like that. Lex Luger was torture racking him. So he kind of wasn't being as much of a giant, so to speak, but he was being a great
Hmm.
worker. That's why I think he should have been in the top 5 at least. And Ric Flair even said himself when Michaels retired Flair that the Big Show was one of the best working big men in the business. I mean, so
Well,
Yeah.
you bet he had the best hygiene out of all of them. Damn.
yes,
um
this is very true.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Grizz. I mean, I think honestly, especially because we didn't get to see him, but we know the name and we know the impact and we know the phenomenon that he was. I think we all. I mean, I don't know the list, but if Andre the Giant isn't number one, I don't even know the. You'd have to question the validity of this list, right? But
Right.
um, yeah, I can't see the Big Show no worse than probably 3, maybe 4. Because I mean, I mean, again, it would probably be um Andre Vader and again, I don't know, I don't think Bam Bam hit that 400 threshold. But yeah, it's no, I would say no worse than 3 or 4, but yeah, that's a surprisingly low number for the Big Show. Like who you mentioned, who was doing top rope drop kicks in WCW, who was um an absolute unit in WCW. He was lean and mean and he just yeah. Um I mean Captain Insano takes no mercy, you know what I mean? Like uh,
Oh, what's up, Mr. Powerhouse? What's up, bro?
what's up T? What's up T? How you
So
doing, bro?
T.
But yeah, no, Big Show. I mean, again, like Panda said, right? That's not even including. We're just looking at skill and agility and ability. We're not even including accolades. Like Big Show has done it all. Big Show
Mhm.
is, he's main evented WrestleMania and had marquee matches with Floyd Mayweather and Aki Bono and um Mick Foley and The Rock and everybody, right? Like
hmm
it's Paul White. Paul White is it's kind of funny. I don't know if Grizz, are you a basketball fan?
that's a negative on that one.
So I grew up in Los Angeles and I'm a Lakers fan, and um I've always had this odd comparison with me and my friends that we always said that the Big Show, that Paul White and Panda, you'll know because you're from LA as well.
Mhm.
The Big Show is Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq was the most dominant, but he only has 4 championships. When in reality, had he been healthy and took care of himself, he should have had 7, 8, 9 championships. And that's Paul White. That's the Big Show, right? Like you mentioned, him being sent to OVW to lose weight, to train and take care of himself and things like that. Like Paul White is Shaquille O'Neal. He should have had 7, 8, 9 championships and been one of the greatest, if not the greatest, and just something never he never lived up to that full potential. But yeah,
Yeah.
big Paul White is an absolute. He's awesome.
I mean,
And
he's an all around great one because I mean, how many big guys can chain wrestle? You know.
Yeah.
exactly.
And you know what's something he doesn't get a lot of credit for? Like I mean, if you look at especially like his run against Cena for the U.S. title and things like that, Show is actually solid on the mic. Again, he's not CM Punk, he's not Roddy Piper, but for a 7 foot guy who is never really asked to cut a promo. He was funny. He had personality. He could cut a promo. Like he's very underrated when you look at it.
And you got to think too, guys. Let's see, how many how many other big guys that worked for Vince took that superplex from the top rope that would cause the ring to collapse? He had that with Brock Lesnar, Mark
Hmm.
Henry, Braun Strowman. And let's not also forget when him and Orton had a rivalry about 13 years ago. It was at the Survivor Series 20. Actually, not even just that one, but heck, whenever him and Mark Henry had a rivalry, how many 400 plus pounders go up to the top rope to deliver a flying elbow? I mean, he obviously he wasn't the giant from WCW at that point, but the guy could go. And and he did lose weight. And I know Big Show was on Jericho's podcast at one point, and I think this was actually before he returned in 2008 when he was a lot leaner looking. And believe he said they wanted him to get up to over 500 pounds or something, and he even said that's too much. That's just too much. I mean, the human body can only take so much. Thank you for that gift there, Panda. Appreciate that. And you know, and he's still somewhat going to this day with AEW. I kind of like when he comes out. It says no more BS, you know, but or at least on the Titantron, whatever. But anything else you guys would like to add on Big? Well, actually, not Panda. Sorry, Goblin. You mentioned people that he worked with. I mean, in WCW, he worked with Hogan. He worked with Nash. He worked with Flair, Savage. I mean, all of the greats. He went to WWF. He worked with Taker, Austin, Kane, Lesnar, Angle, Guerrero. I mean, just the who's who of wrestling. And yeah, he definitely deserved a lot better on this list. Just in from what I'm gathering from all of our opinions. So
Well, when you think about all of the talent that he did work with that was outside of the norm, like a Butterbean or like a Floyd Mayweather, his safety record, for these talents, because some of those guys were reckless, um, it's impeccable, the way that he worked with all these people.
well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I covered that with number 9, which was Big Daddy V, the late Nelson Frazier. And like I was telling Goblin, back in '95 when he was starting to get his monster heel push, he injured Nash, he injured Undertaker. And I mean, at that time, those were your top two. Well, you had three golden gooses. You had Bret Hart, you had Undertaker, and you had Kevin Nash. I guess if you want to throw Michaels in there, and I guess and then throw Razor, those are your five guys. That you don't want to injure or piss them off or anything like that. And after he messed Taker's face up, they're pretty much when his first run there. He did have better success when he came back the second time, but in regards to being top 10, I'll definitely better than the other names that Goblin mentioned, and definitely better than the Great Khali by all means. So I just wanted to make that honorable mention as well. The the number 10 was One Man Gang, and me and Goblin had touched base on his run as One Man Gang and as Akeem. Panda, is there
Yeah,
anything
because
that you?
he should be up there, like as a one man gang, but maybe even higher as the African Dream. You can-
At the time, at the time when that gimmick came about, which this would have been '88, it was funny. Nowadays that would be canceled in a heartbeat, but at the time it was funny. Vince had this thing about having big, heavy guys that had these dancing gimmicks. You saw it with Akeem, you saw it with Brodus Clay, you saw it with
Funkasaurus.
Funkasaurus, yes sir. And then back during the Attitude Era, you had the Oddities and Kurgan from the Oddities. Apparently, Don Callis saw him dancing at somebody's wedding, and he said, "Don't let Vince see you dance." Well, Kurgan let Vince see him dancing, and then shortly after that, here we go. I Don Callis knew. Gosh almighty. All right, so Panda, before I move on, was there anything else you want to add on One Man Gang?
No, no. I mean, I loved him growing up, so he's always gonna have a place in my heart. And I mean, he's underrated for his mic skills because there's a lot of big guys that just couldn't talk, and that were really skilled. They just couldn't talk. So
Right. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to add on Big Daddy V?
I mean, I would have, I kind of wanted to see, it would have been funny to have him have the sexual chocolate gimmick. I think that would have been way better. I'm just saying, him and Mae Young and all that, that would have been way.
Oh, oh,
I'm
jeez.
just saying, in an alternate universe, that happened somewhere.
Oh, Lord. Well, if you think about it, back in '05, '06, they kind of did that with Viscera. He was called the world's largest love machine, Viscera, and he had
Mm,
that weirdo erotic music that he came out to and stuff. So they kind of did that with him to to an extent. I'll just say that.
mm.
Gosh almighty. He had those silk looking pajamas, and he had this silk robe that he walked out to the ring. I was like, what are we doing here? But you mentioned the Mae Young hand thing and all that.
Mm.
I don't know what's worse, that or what happened Monday night with Danhausen and Joe Henry singing "You Are Cursed." I mean,
Oh man,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
it, ma-
The song is catchy, but no, no.
it
The crowd was not
it
getting
makes you
into
say,
it.
"What the fuck, housing, huh?" Like, what the
It
I need that on a T-shirt. What the fuck, housing? Like, oh man.
I need that shirt too, and I guess I could maybe try selling that on the TikTok shop. Maybe I can get some money
There
for
you
this
go.
podcast. All right, all right,
Go
moving.
to Grizzly's Caves TikTok shop. He'll sell that, his merch, and
What I got to
follow him for wrestling updates.
I got to get some merch first. I've got stuff that I'm selling for the resale cave business that I started about a month or so ago, but uh yeah, no more mystery buying mystery packages, because every one that I purchase, it all turns out to be women's stuff. So yeah,
Oh.
I need to start purchasing stuff that I can actually get a visual of what I'm going to be buying and all that. But anyways,
Mm.
all right, so moving on the list, it looks like number 7 is King Kong Bundy, as Gorilla Monsoon called him, the walking condominium. What say you guys?
What number is this? I'm sorry.
Number 7.
You said King Kong Bundy.
Yes, sir.
Um, I mean, okay. See, I mean, obviously, I would have Big Show above Bundy. Um, I can't say I've seen too much of Bundy. I will honestly, I'll fall back on Jim Cornette's expertise of King Kong Bundy. He speaks very highly of Bundy, and he always gives him credit. Um, I will give credit for for King Kong Bundy being an honorary member of No Ma'am, and also being the reason that Al Bundy's name is Bundy, because of King Kong Bundy and the creators of Married with Children, Michael Moy and Ron Levitt. They were huge wrestling fans, and King Kong Bundy was their favorite. So that's I have no problem with Bundy being on the list.
Yeah, he. Oh no, you're good, Panda. I saw your comment. I also saw your other comment, the walking condominium lifestyle or Trojan. Oh my god. Oh, Panda. Anyways, but no, Bundy, you got okay. So he main evented WrestleMania 2 with Hogan. It told a good story. It was a decent match. It was, a typical Hogan slaying a monster, and I mean, heck, the first WrestleMania. Think back to the match that he had with SD Jones or Special Delivery Jones. They say it was 8 seconds. I mean, if you really do do the actual time, it was way over 8 seconds. Just I think Vince was feeding that to Monsoon and them on commentary. But Bundy, he started the precedent with the squash matches at WrestleMania. And then we think to WrestleMania 3, he was in a mixed tag match with well, we can't say the term now, but little people. It was him, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook. They took on Hillbilly Jim, Little Beaver, and the Haiti Kid. Yes, Panda, I agree with that. He never held back when it came to his opinions on wrestlers, and you definitely saw that pretty quickly on his shoot interviews. But I hate to say that this is a highlight, but he dropped an elbow on Little Beaver, and that caused a disqualification and stuff and all that. And Jesse Ventura during the match, he was like, "I can't wait to see when Bundy gets a hold of one of these guys and puts the big kibosh on him, Monsoon." But he obviously he never held any gold in WWF. They brought him back another time in 94. He had a 94-95 run with Ted DiBiase, and it made sense. And he was starting to get booked strong. And then he had his match with Undertaker at WrestleMania 11. That was not one of, and it's not Taker's fault if you think about it. Vince fed Bundy to him for the streak, and it just wasn't a great match. And he wasn't around too much longer. And then, from to my knowledge, he pretty much did independent work after that. Now, believe it or not, I did find some AWA footage of King Kong Bundy. It was a tag match back in 1984, and he was known as Boom Boom Bundy back then. And he was a baby face. He teamed up with the guy that we'll talk about on this list as well, Jerry Blackwell, and they took on the Road Warriors. And believe it or not, it was actually a good match for the participants involved. And Bundy didn't just go in and wreck everybody in that match. I mean, he really sold as a babyface. I mean, you would thought he was a 200 something pounder babyface getting beat up by a 300, 400 pound heel. You know what I'm saying? He could work. And I remember in 1987, the very first Survivor Series, he was in the main event with Andre the Giant captaining a team and Hogan captaining the other. And there was one spot in the match where it was with Ken Patera. And Patera, they brought him back as a baby face, and Patera went to work, and Bundy sold for Patera after one clothesline. And you got to think there's a 200+ pound weight difference. Aesthetically pleasing nowadays, it would take 3 to 10 clotheslines to take a big guy like that down, but he sold for Patera. I mean, the guy was a good worker. anyways, that I don't mean to rant, but on that, but what do you guys have to say?
Um, yeah, like I said, I can't. I really, truthfully, like I like to consider myself very knowledgeable about the Golden Era and the territories. I truly can't say I've done too much research on Bundy. I've never heard a bad thing about him as far as like as a human being, as a locker room in the locker room, causing trouble, being disgruntled employee, anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I got no problems with Bundy being on the list strictly because, again, he has a reputation. The guy's headlined of WrestleMania. Um, uh, he's an attraction. I think when I think of pro wrestlers, right? Like, um, and I mentioned Andre earlier, right? These guys who are um almost transcendent of the sport and the genre, and they're very mainstream names, right? Andre the Giant, Haystacks Calhoun. uh um I would honestly, I'd put King Kong Bundy on that list. I think people, even probably vague wrestling fans, or wrestling fans who were wrestling fans once upon a time, I bet they can draw up the name. Oh yeah, I remember King Kong Bundy. Like it's I think it's just one of those. He's synonymous with pro wrestling for a to a certain degree.
It really surprised me that he did not go work for WCW after both of his WWF runs. That really surprised me because now I believe he would have been better in the Bischoff era. I don't believe he would have thrived under the Jim Herd, Bill Watts, and whoever the fuck else they had running that promotion at the time, because they had a high turnover rate in regards to people that were in charge. Especially for
Well,
you, if
imagine that though. They had the Yeti, and they had that one wizard gimmick. I mean,
right.
during that era, King Kong Bundy, they would have been like, oh, it's the Swamp Thing. It's the you know what I'm saying? It's the Man Pig. Like, no. So he did himself a service by not going in during that era. But I'm
Well,
telling you, him and Val Venus as a tag team during the Attitude Era would have been awesome, bro.
did you just
King,
say King
Val
Kong
Venus
Bundy?
and King Dong Bundy, man, it would have been awesome. You know what I
Oh,
mean? What do you think? He would have had. It would have been a great gimmick in the Attitude Era. Tell me outside.
oh, that's good shit, pal. Oh my gosh. It's sad, honestly, I could see Vince doing something like that. Yeah. Yeah, that honestly, who is that guy? Joey Ryan, what they called him, the King of Dong Style or whatever. If he would have been around in the business around the Attitude Era, I think him and Val Venus would have been a perfect tag team with each other. But yeah, I guess Panda, I could look at it from your vantage point as well, putting him with Venus back during the Attitude Era. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head back during Bischoff's reign. They had the Dungeon of Doom. They had
Yeah,
the
you know what?
monsters.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, Grizz, but yeah, when you had mentioned the Bischoff era, that's the first thing that I thought of. I was like, he would have been a perfect addition to the Dungeon of Doom. Like, yeah,
Because I mean, you had Shark, who is actually on this list. Let's see, Ming, Kamala. You had the one man gang at one point. Ming or Haku, the Zodiac Man. Eventually, you had Big Bubba Rogers and Hugh Morris and all that. But yeah, Bundy would have been perfect because he was a typical monster that Hogan could slay. He already slew him in WWF. Why not slay him in WCW?
Yeah. I mean, the only sad thing on King Kong Bundy, he was actually underrated when it comes to acting. I would have loved to see a live action version of a Spider-Man in the '80s where he played, the Kingpin.
Oh yeah,
He would have killed that, because he basically looked like the Kingpin in real life, bro. It was
Oh,
it was amazing,
absolutely. Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
had the chops, he could actually act.
Yeah.
So
Anything else you guys want to add on King Kong before we move to the next one?
no, rest in peace,
yeah.
Yeah.
a
Shout out to
silent
King
five
Kong.
count, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next on the list, and I'm really shocked on this one. Number 6 is the late Rodney Anawai, or as we knew him as, Yokozuna.
I mean, Yokozuna, like he's agile for a big man. Like you ever heard people say that like his super kick was amazing, or his, thrust kick. Let's not call it a super kick. I'm tired of super. His thrust kick was amazing. His agility was amazing. His when he was healthy, his in ring ability was phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even pre Yokozuna, he was Kokina, the great Kokina,
Hmm.
Kokina Maximus, and the guy could move. I mean, basically, they billed him as a wild Samoan savage, which they could have. I mean, that could have even worked as well if Vince would have paired him with the head shrinkers and stuff, and they would have been a trio instead of just a tag team. That could have worked, but the guy could move, and Taker even. I remember watching a interview that he did, and he had said he really wanted to work with Yoko. He said, "Please let me work with this guy, Vince." And then that's when he said, "Well, ha ha, Mark, you see that big bastard there? That's who you're going to be working with." And which we all knew was the late Giant Gonzalez, El Gigante. God rest his soul. But yeah, man, just the way he ran, and he did not hurt people. That's the crazy thing. He did not hurt people except that one enhancement talent that we've all seen the video reels on. I'm sure you guys know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about. But for the listeners that are not aware, Yokozuna's finishing move was the bonsai drop. And if you don't know what that is, look it up on YouTube. It's basically a seated senton splash from the second rope, and he would always yell bonsai, and that big massive behind of his would crush his opponent. Now, there's one in particular enhancement talent, I do not remember his name, but he did not land safely. He kicked his feet out and squashed this guy, and you could tell that guy was hurting really badly to have all that humanity come crashing down on you. The rumor was is that this enhancement guy disrespected the late Mr. Fuji, and that was something you do not do. You don't disrespect Mr. Fuji. Yes, we know he's the king of the ribs, but you don't disrespect him. And you can kind of see Fuji tapping Yoko's leg after he did the bonsai drop to this guy, basically showing, telling him thank you for what he did. I don't know what was said or what was done. I have not heard the full details, but with that being said, yeah, he had a good reputation. Apparently, he was a sweetheart of a guy. I know Rikishi said that their heat went out and it was going to cost a lot of money to get his heat turned back on, and Yoko wrote him a blank check. He said, "Put whatever the amount is, write it in, get your heat turned back on." He
Hmm.
took he I mean, which of course in their culture they take care of their family, which I respect that. If you can do that, if you can afford it, by all means do it. And I respect Yoko for doing that. And
Yeah.
Taker loved working with him. And me personally, I like that sumo match that he had with the late Earthquake or John Tenta that they had on Monday Night Raw. I thought that was awesome. I thought Yoko was great as a WWF champion. This
Yep.
on the last episode that I streamed, which Goblin, you and Doofy had already left, but I was talking with Freeze and Chris Awesome. Yoko should have just been a one time champ that had a longer run, and that should have started that night when he beat Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9, and not had Hogan basically do a run in impromptu match and then take the belt off Yoko just to drop it back to him a few months later at King of the Ring. I thought that really tarnished the moment. It tarnished Yoko's Royal Rumble 93 victory. It tarnished his victory over Bret Hart. I just thought it was a stupid decision. Um, I don't know what y'all's take is on that, but it's just a shame that his weight got so bad that they eventually had to cut him. He could have been just as effective if he got down to 400 and something pounds. And honestly, he could have moved a lot better. And personally, I think there's a chance he'd still be with us to this day.
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, in my opinion, he should be in the top 5. If anything, in my opinion, he should have been number 1. But that's just my opinion. But what say you
I mean,
guys?
I'm a bit biased because as a human being, he was really great. So like, we're from LA, being Goblin are, but like he did a lot for the kids, the youth in Carson, California, which is near LA. You know, it's a really rough neighborhood, but you know he did a lot for a lot of the local churches there. He was a really good Christian fellow, right? You know, and his family were really nice. His son and his niece and them, his nephew, Damu, will talk about that, like to no end. But like he donated to like things all the time, and he spent time with his family. But I think it's hard when you get injured and you keep on going. You know, that lifestyle that they live isn't for the faint of heart. And it doesn't matter what size. You have like guys that are super fit that you get into the drinking and you do all the things to mask all the injuries and stuff, and you just end up getting caught up. And instead of like putting certain types of supplements in his body, he just ate, and he ate his pain. And unfortunately that caused a lot of his early demise. But as a human being, yeah, he's a top tier person there. And he didn't stink. Rest in peace to Vader and all the other stinky tough guys. But you know what
I, Goblin, thank you for uh, doing that research on the name. Dan, I'm probably going to butcher the last name, but Dubiel or Dubile.
Yeah, I'm guessing Dubiel. Um, yeah, no, honestly, I agree with both of you guys, right? Like, by all accounts, everybody loved Yoko, right? Everybody loved Yoko. Um, and I wanted to let Panda speak before I say anything because again, Panda being Samoan, Panda, I'm Panda would can speak on his impact, right?
I mean?
Culturally and in the business, and again as a family man and things like that, Um, but yeah, I agree with you, Grizz, as far as the ranking. I love Yokozuna. I really do. Like when I think of my childhood, like Yoko was awesome. Like I always remember as a kid, um, not liking the heels, right? The heels were heels, and as it should be, right? Like I grew up hating Rick Rude and Ted DiBiase and Haku and those guys. I did. And again, I was by the time Yoko hit the scene, it was what, late '92. I was like 8 or 9, and I don't recall ever being like, oh, I can't stand that guy. Like I never rooted against him. I liked Yoko. Yoko was unbelievable in the ring. Um, he he I don't know. I can't even put into words how highly I think of Yokozuna. I think, yeah, I think what really bums me out is post WrestleMania 10 or post the initial run, Vince didn't know what to do with him. As if as if keeping him in the main event scene was a bad thing. Like after WrestleMania 10, like how did he never wrestle Brett again? You know what I mean? Like how did he not have main event matches? How was he not in the world title picture? And he again, him and him and Owen were a great tag team. We haven't even touched on that. Him and Owen and Camp Cornette, it was is actually one of the bright spots of like 94, 95, 96. You know, Davey, Owen, Yoko, um, the bodies, but Yoko as a even Yoko as a tag, right? And obviously we can look back now and think, oh yeah, it's a safe place to put Yoko as his weight was beginning to balloon and it started to become an issue. So put him in a tag with Owen. They had the tag titles a couple times and um but yeah, man, Yoko could have. I mean, just think of the big business because I can't say for sure how old he was when he passed or like he didn't go anywhere outside of what 96 or 97.
So the last appearance that I recall that he made was at the '96 Survivor Series. It was a 4-on-4 elimination match. After that, he wasn't seen again on TV unless if he made house show appearances. Because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he got released until either '97 or '98. I know you mentioned about.
Yeah, see,
Go ahead.
he was 30. He was 30 in 96. He had turned 30. So again, and speaking in wrestlers terms, right? Like that's prime. He's barely entering his prime. That's not even especially nowadays. I mean, we have a 47-year-old world champion in CM Punk right now currently, you know. And no shade on Punk. Punk's in great condition. He's gassed out of his mind um and everything, right? But we have an era right now where Randy Orton's 46 and killing it. Uh, Cody's in his 40s. Roman's in his 40s. It's an older man's. LA Knight's in his 40s, but looking back, Yoko was 30 in his prime. You just have to kind of question what could have been 31, 32, 33-year old Yoko in 97, 98, 99 against Austin, against Rock, against Foley. Like you know what I mean? Like there's all of the things that we could have had Yoko doing in the Attitude Era. Like and not necessarily like some wild gimmick or anything like that, but just the amount of talent that was on its way that he was just slightly ahead of, and that's not even to include Ruthless Aggression Era when we had the Benoits and the Malinkos and the Guerreros and the Jerichos and all these guys. So yeah, man, like yeah, Yoko's got to be the biggest like what if or should have been whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I can never heap enough praise on Yokozuna. I think Yokozuna is just an amazing worker.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree on that. Now he did work with Austin one time pre-Attitude Era. This was at the '96 SummerSlam. It was a preliminary match. It lasted literally 2 minutes and some change. And basically, Yoko went up for the bonsai drop. The second rope broke or whatever. He fell down. Austin got the pin, and that was it. And yeah, you Goblin, you hit the nail on the head. What if? I mean, he could have worked with big. Well, I mean, he did work with this Mabel at the time. He did work with Vader some, but what if he worked with Kane? What if he worked with Big Show? And I'll even say this: Brock Lesnar now, or even Mark Henry. I gotta say, Brock Lesnar's a beast. He is probably one of the strongest men I've ever seen in wrestling. Now, yes, he could get the Big Show and Omos and all these other guys up. Yoko was a little bit more low to the ground. He was just a hair over 6 foot, maybe 6'3" or 6'4". But I don't think Brock would have been getting him up for an F5. Just,
No.
just going to throw that out there. But it, I'm kind of
Yeah.
surprised he didn't go to WCW either because, and I want to mention this too. You know, Hogan was very picky on who he worked with. And I mean, because you guys got to think it was almost a year before he finally worked with Vader in WCW, and he came back early '93, and he had a couple of pay-per-view matches with them, and he worked apparently did a big house show loop with him too. So obviously Hogan was very high on this guy as well, even at that time. You know what I'm saying? But I do want to touch base on what you had said, Goblin. After WrestleMania 10, you're right. Vince didn't know what to do because thank you again for that gift, Panda. But yeah, he had that sumo match with Earthquake on Raw, which I thought was awesome at the time. I was 8 or 9 at that time. And I know he had a brief tag team run with Crush. They feuded with the Head Shrinkers at the '94 King of the Ring. Then eventually at the '94, I don't even think he was on the '94 SummerSlam, come to think about it. But he had the second casket match with Taker at the '94 Survivor Series. And then that's when he was gone for about 4 or 5 months. And then that's when he came back and had that tag team with Owen. And like you, Goblin, I think they were a really good tag team. You had the big monster heel in Yoko, and then you had the guy that could work just as good as his brother, referring to the late Owen Hart, and they meshed really well. But when Yoko came back, he was up, like you said, his weight was getting heavier. I know they tried to send him off, him and Vader both, to one of them clinics or whatever to lose weight or whatever, and it didn't happen because if I'm not mistaken, I think Pritchard had said that there were some states that he could not get, the athletic commission would not license him or whatever to compete in their state. You know what I'm saying? And then that's when from what I gather, that's when it really became a problem. Did you guys happen to see that horrendous, what was it, Heroes of Wrestling pay per view that took place? I want to say back in '99, fall of '99, because Yoko was supposed to be the main event of that match against King Kong Bundy. Or have you at least heard of it?
It's not ringing a bell. I no, I can't. I honestly can't say I've heard of it.
Whenever you get a chance, go to YouTube, and there's like, I don't want to say documentaries, but there's informational videos on it. Basically, I don't even we don't, nobody really knows who this promoter was. I think it was just somebody that had some money that wanted to put on a show with the legends and stuff and all that. It's reviewed as like, it's been referred to as like one of the worst pay-per-views in the history of wrestling. And the main event was supposed to have been Yoko versus King Kong Bundy. It was like 1,000 more, like over 1,000 pound match or something like that. And it turned out becoming a tag team match because Jake Roberts and the late Jim the Anvil Neidhart were supposed to be the semi main event match. Well, Jake was really in no condition to compete, so they called an audible, and King Kong Bundy wound up coming out. Then Yoko came out. Yes, Panda, this was worse than an AEW pay per view. When you see the YouTube videos on it, you'll definitely understand. But Jake was just, he was in no condition at that time because everybody knows Jake had his demons and all that. So basically, they called an audible, and it was a tag team match, and then they eventually had the match, and then the pay per view went off the air, and I don't know what happened to this promoter, but I don't think anything was ever heard from him again. But anyways, with that being said, anything else you guys want to add on Yoko before we go to number 5?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, like I said. Oh, you know what? Also, yes, actually, yes. Real quick, I want to. I loved his first real like major storyline, with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I loved it. I genuinely was like, oh man, he hurt Hacksaw, and like Hacksaw came back, and honestly, like it had been a few years since Hacksaw really had the crowd behind him. Like it had been a long time since you had seen that Hacksaw, that like pure babyface Hacksaw. Um, so yeah, I want to give a shout out to that one because not only was it a great thing, but also like it got Yoko over. It really did. So shout out to Hacksaw for getting Yoko over, because man, that was such a good gimmick, like such a good angle too. Because Vince, he loved that patriotic America versus the evil foreign power. That was Vince's bread and butter right there. He loved that. I mean, he tried to make Americans dislike Finland for some reason. uh,
Well,
so
well,
yeah.
well, based on the guy that they had representing Finland at the time, he did a good job of getting the fans to hate Finland. Not trying to talk bad about the late Ludwig Borga or Tony Haim as he was known in real life. But oh yeah, and you mentioned about foreign. The '93 Survivor Series. In the main event, he captained a team called the Foreign Fanatics. It was him, Ludwig Borga. It
Hmm.
was supposed to have been the Quebecers, but Carl Willett was taken out of that match and he was replaced with Crush when Crush and Fuji had reunited and stuff. And that was to basically kick off the storyline for Yoko and Taker. And I'll tell you, even with the gimmick that Taker had back then, him and Yoko just meshed so well. And they just and not just casket matches. They've also had other matches. There was one match they had. It was on a Coliseum home video. It was the Undertaker's Gravest Matches, and the match they had, yeah, it was a 5 minute match or so, but it flowed well. They just, I mean, Yoko could work with anybody, and the crazy thing is, and I was just thinking about it. Other than Rikishi, I you don't see anybody doing a bonsai drop anymore for a finisher.
Nia Jax does it. I think, right, or doesn't? Yeah, Nia Jax does it. She does the bonsai drop.
Okay, well, I'm out of touch a little bit. Yeah, that would make sense for her to do that. Not
Yeah,
knocking, not
yeah.
knocking Nia. She looks good now. She's lost a lot of weight.
And as a fellow Samoan, you know what I mean. It's a good tribute. Like honestly, if anybody could do it, Nia can do it. Like she's part of the family, and she's part of the lineage.
Right. All right. So we're gonna move on to number 5. I didn't write the names down like I did for the last one, but number 5 is the boss himself, Andre the Giant. Oh man, there's so much I could say on Andre.
I mean, if real quick, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, that's about 4 spots too low. But again, uh, it's Andre the Giant. His reputation precedes himself, precedes him, and um, again, by all accounts, and all of the scholars and historians of wrestling, Cornette and unfortunately Meltzer and those guys, um,
Mm,
70s Canadian Andre, global Andre was an absolute monster in the ring.
hmm
He was just he was beyond agile and mobile, and he was absolutely deserving of the name of the eighth wonder of the world. So yeah, again, 4 spots too low. What the American and what most people have been uh um have have been witness to as from Andre the Giant is nowhere near the reason that Andre the Giant is a household name. So, um, yeah, I mean, and another guy along the lines of Yoko, who I love. I will always put Andre in my top 10. I will always say he's arguably the greatest of all time, just because I am a firm believer of the wrestling business and the point and the object, and the goal is to put asses in seats, and that guy did it all around the world for every single promoter, for every territory, with every champion. um and I mean, he's the greatest of all time, probably, just from that, if you're looking at it through that lens.
Yeah, he. and I've seen some of his stuff from the 70s, and my gosh, that he could move. Oh my gosh, could he move? And even going into the early 80s, I watched a cage match he had with Big John Studd, and he did a seated senton from the top rope onto Big John Studd. And I want to say, I think he did it to, he might have done it to Kamala as well, because I know they had feuded some, especially I think down in Mid South. And yeah, just unbelievable. And I know he gets a bad rep with some wrestlers, and generally it's those that were on his bad side. But those that were on his good side had nothing but great things to say about Andre. And you guys know this, but for the listeners, if Andre liked you, you were good. And as Paul Roma said, if he didn't like you, stay the hell away from him, get the hell out of his way. You know, we can name people like Macho Man Randy Savage. No baby oil, get out. The Iron
No,
Sheik.
no, baby oil.
That's
No,
right.
baby, oh.
Let's see, then John Studd. And I know nowadays it would seem trivial to just the fans, but Panda, with you being in the business, you know as well as I do, you don't take someone else's gimmick and make it your own, especially if you're working in the same promotion and or shtick. For instance, Andre's shtick was he stepped over the top rope. Well, Big John Studd would step over the top rope as well. And Andre even said, "You no giant, you go under rope," or however it was worded. And Studd still kept doing it. Now, props to John Studd, God rest his soul. Andre was his idol. That was his role model. He wanted to be a giant. That's why he took growth hormones and all that. And sadly, that was one of the things that led to his untimely demise. But as George the Animal Steele said, Stud was just stupid with that, and he brought a lot of Andre's wrath on him. He brought that wrath on himself because he wouldn't listen. And people say he hated Warrior. Well, Warrior has said that, Andre liked working with him and stuff like that. And also, if Andre liked you, he would work a good match with you, or he would do the best that he could to make the match look good. Like, hell, he sold for Warrior. Okay, let's go back a year earlier when he embarrassed Bam Bam Bigelow in Madison Square Garden. He didn't like Bam Bam. I've heard I've heard bits and pieces. But heck, I saw him have a great match with Tito Santana. A really good match. And this is when Andre's health was failing him. And speaking of his health failing him,
Would you rank him higher as like the greatest thespian of professional wrestling? I'm just saying.
I thought
I think he's better than Batista's. Like so.
well,
You know, The Princess Bride is a great movie. I'm just saying.
well, that's true. And for those that don't know, he was also in an episode or two back in the 70s on that show, the $6 million Man, where he played Sasquatch. And he moved pretty good in that show. But again, that was back in the 70s when his health was a lot better and stuff. But yes, I would say he was definitely a better thespian out of the wrestlers, and he was also in one of the Conan movies too. Is that does that sound correct?
I think he was in Conan the Destroyer. So
He was in which one?
yeah, Conan the Destroyer.
Okay,
From what my memory serves me, I don't know. It was him and Wilt Chamberlain.
yeah.
Like,
I remember Wilt Chamberlain, and I remember hearing Andre was in one of them. I just couldn't remember if it was Barbarian or Destroyer. So, but
they kind of melt together. But like I thought Red Sonja was a Conan movie, but it is.
oh me. one other thing about Andre, he was very well known for wanting to pay for dinner, no matter who it was. If he invited you to eat with him, he always wanted the bill. How many wrestlers? I mean, and you hear about the cheapskate wrestlers, but then you have wrestlers like Andre that would pay for the meal. How many wrestlers would do that? You know what I'm saying? But with that being said,
Mm-hmm.
I know that, and also his strength, and he never worked out. I mean, guys, you could tell he was not a bodybuilder, but he had that giant strength. I mean, to turn over a car with like 5 or 6 people in it, you know, is impressive. Heck, he would pick. Apparently, supposedly, he picked Arnold up, and I think sat him on a table, like he was a small child. And Lex Luger even said they were. I might have been at the Atlanta airport. It was at an airport. Might have been Atlanta, but I can't say for certain. But Andre was being driven on a cart, and I think he came up next to Luger. He reached out that arm of his, picked up Luger with one arm, and put him in the cart with him, or something like that. I don't know, but very strong guy. And the I'm sure I'm sure y'all have seen it, but there's a video clip from when he would do tours with the AWA, and he was being interviewed by the late Mean Gene Okerlund, and Okerlund tried on one of Andre's rings, and it fit like three of Okerlund's fingers. Like, or Okerlund could squeeze 3 fingers into Andre's ring. I mean, just a massive individual. But yeah, if and I've thought about this too. Same with Yoko. If Andre's health was better, obviously drinking as much as he did not help him by no means. Also, he was in his mid to late 40s, and he was over 500 pounds. And have y'all seen any of his matches post WWF, like when he would travel the world?
I have not. I haven't.
Okay, so I know he did a tour in Mexico, and he had a different colored singlet. It was a red one, and he was a lot heavier, and his hair was a lot thicker as well. And he did a lot of 6-man tag matches. And this was the one time that I know of that he shared a ring with Yokozuna. This was back when Yoko was Kokina, and he dwarfed Yoko. Which Yoko wasn't 500 pounds at that point. He was probably 380 to 4 at this point, but he was still a big guy. But Andre dwarfed him, and it was like, oh my gosh. But he had a hard time getting in the ring. Some people would say, like, he'd be in Japan, he'd be walking behind somebody with his hand on their shoulders and stuff, and just to brace himself and all that. It was really sad to see, but it's made me think, what if he was still alive? He'd be making them Legends appearances on Raw television, or. But I don't know. Anyways, what say you guys?
Um, yeah, I feel like what Panda said, right? How it hurts your heart to watch it. I think that's probably subconsciously a thing. I even even Andre's last appearances in WWF, right? With he had the like the I don't even know. They're not. I don't know what they're called. Like they're canes, but like you put your hands through they're kind of like a walking stick kind of situation that he had. Um, like when LOD comes and helps him out. Was that SummerSlam '91, I think it was, or um yeah, I think just seeing Andre like that, yeah, I don't want to see Andre like that because, like I said, I I mean, he's an absolute legend of Mount Rushmore proportions, right? Like he's um what is the saying? Standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like he is that giant. He is that giant. Like the business, like Hogan and those guys, like they were standing on his shoulders because that's how important he was to the business. Um, so yeah, as far as the late stage of his career in those matches that um like I don't think I could bring myself to watch him just because I don't want to see him that way. Um, yeah, exactly. Like Panda. Yeah, Andre is the he is the Mount Rushmore. He's the actual mountain that Rushmore is built on. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yes, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a problem with a lot of modern wrestling fans. And not to go on a tangent, but like you see a lot of modern wrestling fans, they only compare uh Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, AJ Styles, and Kurt Angle. Like that's and Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson. Like that's every discussion and every live and everything is about those five guys. You know, but the business, right? The business that we have today and that we all love, and maybe not love today's product, but we still love at in our 40s, is because of guys like Andre the Giant. And I love Andre. I really do. Like for so many reasons. The pop culture of the Princess Bride and everything else. It's yeah, like he's it's like you kind of look at we always look at like the modern era, right? That's like WWF 80 and beyond, 80 to now. But Andre was not only in the 80s, but he was also in the 70s. And um he's up there with Bruno, and it's Bruno and Andre and Buddy Rogers and Luthez and Gorgeous George and um Mildred Burke and everybody else, Bobo Brazil and all the great guys who preceded and made the wrestling business viable. Like, and that's a big thing, viable. Like, he's the absolute definition and of attraction. He laid the groundwork for guys like The Undertaker, the guys like Brock Lesnar, the guys who don't need the belt, but when they come in, you go, oh shit, here comes this
Mm.
guy. Like that was Andre,
Oh
He's
yeah.
transcendent because you think about it like a somebody that
Yeah.
transcends like wrestling. Does anybody else have a Andy Warhol painting of him that's people buy his T-shirt that says "Obey"? Don't even know that that's Andre the Giant. They just think that's the coolest person ever, and like he transcended all of wrestling. So he's one of those icons that you don't have wrestling without him. Love him or hate him.
Right. There was in the 1989 Royal Rumble match, and this was the first time that they did it with 30. Because 88 they just did 20, so 89 they did 30, and Axe and Smash drew 1 and 2, which was interesting, and then Andre drew number 3, and Gorilla. I know Monsoon gets a lot of crap for not being a good commentator, but he had some good liners, and one of them was, "It's Andre. Andre pulled number 3. He doesn't look like he's in any hurry to get to the ring." Or he'd say, "Look at him take his time," and all this and that. And but another one of the things in that match that really stood out, because he was feuding with Jake Roberts at this time, and this was leading up to the WrestleMania 5 match, because Andre was scared of snakes and had a kayfabe heart attack on a Saturday night main event. But Jake came in, I think, at number 7, and then Andre just beat the hell out of him for 2 minutes and then threw him out. Right around the time that number 8 came out, and then I don't know, 5 or so minutes later, Andre runs to the ring, throws Damien in. Andre sees the snake. He he eliminates himself, and he hightails it out of there and all that. Just he was a good storyteller, and and I mentioned earlier that he did some tours with AWA. They really used him for battle royals, and it got down to, I want to say there was like 7 people left. It was him, Hogan, the High Flyers, which was Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell, and then I think two or three of Bobby Heenan's family because Heenan was still down there at the time. And I think there was a spot where Heenan's family would run at the babies, and Andre had a hold of Brunzell, picked him up. Brunzell would drop kick one. Hogan would had a hold of Gagne, picked him up. Gagne drop kicked another one. It was just kind of a back and forth thing, and it really got the crowd on their feet. But Greg Gagne, who you know he's kind of like kind of one of them guys where you don't know if it's true or not. But supposedly they were going to have Hogan and Andre on a ABC or a CBS special. I think sometime in early '84. At least that's what their plan was. Now, what do you guys think? You think that would have been a? You think do you think there's any legitimacy to that? And if it is, do you think it would have? Well, me personally, I think the match would have been a lot better because Andre's health was still in pretty good shape at that point. But what say you guys?
You said AWA.
Yes.
Um, I mean, again, probably not much legitimacy. You can probably, it's probably like, oh, I was going to do that, like that, like you tell your wife, I was going to throw the trash, like, that's how I took it. That's how I take it,
That's kind of what I thought too. And I've never met Greg Gagne, never talked with him, but a lot of a lot of the fans that comment on his videos on YouTube, they kind of share your sentiments on that. But if that was true, I think it would have been a good thing for AWA. It would have really put. I mean, they were already on the map, but it would have taken them to the next level and stuff. But as you guys know, and wrestling historians know, that didn't happen because Hogan jumped ship, and then he took about a quarter of AWA with him to WWF. So, anyways,
Here's the question for you, Grizz.
okay.
What do you think about the Andre the Giant? You know which one I'm talking
You cut out on me there, Panda. What were you saying?
about. Oh, sorry. Andre the Giant. His best tag team partner, his best tag team gimmick. If that became a legitimate tag team at the time, where would you have?
Well,
Pa-
yeah,
Panda, you're cutting out, Panda. I think I think you're blocking
Oh,
your.
sorry. You know what? My bad. So how Andre was in a tag team. He's wearing that black mask. He was looking great. If they made it a serious team,
uh-huh.
who would you put them up against?
Oh, let's see. So that was the Machines, and that was in '86.
Mm-hmm.
He'd already been They'd already been going from town to town with Bundy and Stud. Other than that tag team, if we're going to talk about heel tag teams, I would have said put them up against the Hart Foundation because they were heels and they were up and coming at that point. Um, I would even say, oh, who what? No, let's see, Demolition wasn't up there. Well, hell, Axe was the super machine, so that definitely wouldn't have worked. But crap, the Dream Team, Beefcake and Valentine,
Oh,
and then another heel tag team. Let's see. Well, I would have said Volkov and Sheik, but
yeah. Mm.
we all know Andre would have beat the hell out of Sheik, anytime he got his hands on him. But yeah, those three tag teams, for that time frame, that's who I would have put him up with, other than just Bundy and Stud.
No, I would have loved to just see them get beat up by the Bushwhackers. You know what I mean? Mm. The poke of doom for
uh,
Bushwhack Luke.
Panda, there was something else you mentioned about seeing Andre like that. So back when I had a Peacock subscription, I watched a lot of the Coliseum home videos basically reliving my childhood. But then there were some that I watched that I'd never seen, and one of them I'd heard of, but never seen it. It was the Battle Royal at the Royal Albert Hall, which took place October of '91. So this was post Warrior getting let go and pre Undertaker winning the belt from Hogan. Come to think of it, Hogan wasn't even on that show, but they had a lot of good matches. But at the end of the match, after British Bulldog won the Battle Royal, Typhoon and Earthquake start beating him up and stuff on the outside. Well, then you hear the crowd going crazy. Well, here out comes Andre, and he's moving a little better, but he's using one of those hand crutches, and he makes the save. And buddy, he swung that cane like a baseball bat at Typhoon. And I mean, okay. He swung it like a bat. Now, I guess when he landed it, it didn't do much damage because you didn't see any welts or blood drawn. But yeah, man, I mean, he cracked Typhoon with that, cracked Earthquake with it, made the big save. Bulldog got into the ring to pose and stuff. Then Andre standing outside, he reached his hand in. Bulldog shook his hand and all that. But it was still sad to see him like that, And then he made an appearance on a Clash of the Champions. He was standing outside, but he had both hand crutches, and it's just really sad to see. I want to say it was like early to mid '92 or something like that. He had kind of a brief cameo where Jim Ross interviewed him, and I know in '91 he was supposed to be in the Royal Rumble match because they had actually advertised him, but I'm going to say for health reasons he withdrew. Now, I, I debated if I wanted to mention this or not, but he made an appearance at Herb Abrams' UWF program in October of 1990 because his contract, I guess, had run out with WWF. Herb Abrams was very ecstatic about signing Andre, so he makes his appearance and all that. And I think they did a recording for what they call Captain Lou's Corner talk show or whatever. They did it in the ring and then they did one outside of the ring. And then all of a sudden, Andre was gone. And as one of the UWF producers said, well, Vince called him right up, brought him right back. So, do you think Andre would have had a long career at UWF had he stayed?
Probably not.
He probably would have killed Abrams because of all the not getting paid. Because you hear the tales of the guys not getting paid or checks bouncing. I mean, this guy was bouncing checks before Paul Heyman did. I mean, he set that precedent. But yeah, it just kind of makes you think because a lot of the greats from WWF went to go work for Herb Abrams for a short amount of time. It seemed like, but then you hear the tales of her writing bad checks and spending all the money on cocaine and I'm sorry. I think back to that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, but cocaine and hookers, as B. Brian Blair would say. Anyways, anything else y'all want to add on the boss before I move on to the next one?
No, I mean he should be number one. I mean, he's inspirational too. You ever heard his quote? Like, I don't like to talk bad about people. I love people equally, except for Hulk Hogan. Fuck you. He's a bad person.
uh,
So that's a great quote right there.
well, and I'm one thing about Andre, and when I watched that documentary, I remember seeing Vince McMahon tearing up, and you would rarely ever see McMahon tear up about anybody, but he teared up about Andre, and that really spoke volumes to how he felt about the boss. And I know Hogan was scared to death of him, especially when it came time for WrestleMania 3, because he was afraid Andre was gonna not do the job, basically. And he just kept telling him, "Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, And then turns out Andre did exactly what Hogan had laid out for the match and stuff. So, anyways, it's just kind of one of them things. Again, if Andre liked you, he'll do business. If he didn't, you're fucked, basically. So, but anyways, Next on the list, I don't really, I know a very small amount about this guy, but I will turn. But number four is Chris Taylor. And the only thing I know about Chris Taylor is he trained at with AWA. I don't know if it's still on YouTube or not, but there was a video of the training camp over or Vern Gagne's training camp up in Minnesota. And I've heard Ken Patera say it was outside in the freezing cold. It was in a barn. He said chickens would, there was chicken shit all over the ring. And they did a lot of calisthenics, did a lot of running. And and Chris Taylor is actually in this. I can't tell you a weight, but he was a big guy. He didn't really have that long of a wrestling career, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say his wrestling career was maybe 6 years at the most. I believe I believe he was an amateur wrestler, maybe collegiate as well. But uh, the clip I remember the most about him was running and doing a bunch of body weight squats and stuff. But you also see Vern, showing how to do certain things in the ring, and you get a brief glimpse of a very young Sergeant Slaughter. And let's see who else was in this class. I think they also showed a little bit of Billy Robinson working with the guys. But yeah, I'm kind of shocked that Chris Taylor, with as short of a career that he had, that he's this high up. Do y'all have any info on this fella?
Can honestly say I have no idea who that is. And not I'm not like disrespectful way or not a he's a nobody type thing. You know what I mean? I can genuinely say I've never heard of him.
What say you, Panda?
Well, like I said, my little one of his family members make this. There's he shouldn't be on this list.
Uh, we couldn't hear you there, boss man.
Oh, sorry. Did one of his children make this list? Because why is he on this list? And why is he so high? He shouldn't be in the top 25, the top 35. He shouldn't be in the top 100. You know. So
I could no, definitely his children ain't on the list. I really couldn't tell you. Like I said, I couldn't really tell you a lot about him. But like I said, he trained with Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson. So obviously they thought very highly of him, in the AWA. And and I know he's no longer with us too. I do know he passed. It's been a long time since I did any research on him, but yeah, he was a very big he was a big fella. And but anyways, we'll move on to the next one. I know a little bit more about, but number three was the late Crusher Jerry Blackwell. And he did make some appearances for Vince, especially if you watch the what they call old school wrestling portion on back when Peacock had all that. And Jerry Blackwell was like 450 pounds. He wasn't really tall, but what really impressed me about this guy is he could throw drop kicks. And he was from Stone Mountain, Georgia. So anytime I'd hear an announcer say that, my first person I thought of was Jake the Snake Roberts. But when they mentioned the weight, I was like, "Yep, that's definitely not Jake Roberts." And he had a pretty good run. He was part of Sheik Adnan Al Qaisi's army, and then he eventually had a babyface run. And like I stated earlier, with King Kong Bundy back when he was known as Boom Boom Bundy, they had a really good tag match with the Road Warriors and stuff. But Blackwell could move for a guy his size. He kind of looked like a super heavyweight version of Mick Foley, so to speak. I don't know if that's. I mean, I don't know if y'all can visualize that, but he. I know at one point he had the. I don't know if you want to call it a headdress, but you know what I'm talking about. Kind of like what the Iron Sheik would wear. He would wear that same kind of headdress that like Sheik Adnan El Casey or Iron Sheik would wear. He was also tag team partners with Ken Patera in AWA, And if I remember correctly, I want to say they had a tag team championship run as well, maybe like an 83, 84, give or take. But have y'all ever watched? I can't even believe I'm going to reference this. The Wrestle Rock Rumble. Have y'all heard of that or familiar with that?
I think I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Okay, so Goblin and Panda, y'all's homework. Y'all got to go to YouTube and watch the Wrestle Rock Rumble. It's one of them things. It's so bad it's good. But Jerry Blackwell has a portion in there where he's in a recording studio. I can't even say singing. He's more like just talking. And then they go to a clip where he does like a splash on this big piece of plywood and it splits in two or whatever. And there's like a big old mattress underneath or whatnot. But turns out, and I just found this out recently because I watched a Scott Hall clip because Scott Hall was with AWA at the time, and he's actually in this Wrestle Rock Rumble. Him and Kurt Hennig are singing and all that. And he had said something that Jerry was getting frustrated because apparently Jerry couldn't read, and he was having a hard time with his segment and stuff. And then they finally powered through it somehow. But anyways, look up Wrestle Rock Rumble. And then if you can also find the video, there's one where Cornette and Sean Oliver from Kayfabe Commentaries, they're watching it and stuff, and just their reactions to it is priceless. But anyways, get back to Crusher Jerry Blackwell. He was one of the many big monsters that Hogan would slam, and he, like I said, he was a pretty good worker. Um, the biggest disservice I think was done to him was it was the AWA Super Sunday event that they had in April of 1983. So it was a tag match main event. It was Blackwell and Sheik Adnan against Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon. Keep in mind that the semi main event was for the AWA Heavyweight Championship with Hulk Hogan versus Nick Bockwinkel. I don't know what the whole purpose was of having this tag match as the main event because it was an okay match, but that shouldn't have been the main event. But I think YouTube still has that Super Sunday, so if y'all get a chance, be sure you check it out. But it was not the best. I do know. I remember Blackwell and Adnan got color in that match, and I remember they did the job for Vern and Mad Dog, and I'm thinking, why are we doing this? But anyways, what say you guys?
Um, I again, I got to admit, just another guy who I know by name only. Um, can't speak too much of him. Um, yeah, so like I really can't. I'll leave it to you. You obviously definitely know more about Crusher Blackwell than I do. Um, again, if he belongs on the list, I'll let you speak to that. I really only know him by name only. I can't speak on any feuds or anything like that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to just kind of take your word on it. I have to
Mhm.
have to do some homework.
He
I've
did.
only seen them on ESPN Classic, and so it makes me think. Respect to the person that made this list, but they probably should, book appointment for a kidney dialysis appointment because this is some deep cuts. I'm sorry.
Now,
Get your fiber in, Metamucil, all that stuff. Whoever wrote this list, thank you.
I will say this: I will agree. He deserves to be on this list by all means. Like I said, just with the matches of his that it's been a few years since I've watched any AWA matches, but the ones I watched that he was in, he definitely deserves to be in. I'm really surprised that Vince didn't try to snatch him up, especially after let's just be real, he put the territories out of business. I'm really surprised he didn't snatch up Blackwell. But anyways, now I know Blackwell worked with Vince Sr., but I digress. I apologize, guys, but he definitely deserves to be on the list. The only one I will say that does don't think needs to be on this list would have been Big Daddy V. That's just my opinion. But Blackwell deserves it. I don't know if I would have put him up as high up as he was. Personally, I think I would have traded Big Show's spot with Blackwell's. Definitely. I definitely don't think he should have been above Andre the Giant. I definitely don't think Chris Taylor should have been on the list. That's just, you know, but but yeah, Panda. That was actually one of the matches I watched Blackwell on was those ESPN classics and stuff.
Yeah, because I think wasn't he fighting like what's his name? He was really popular Latino main eventer for AEW. Not Martel, not those guys. He had great hair too, dog. Dang, I'm having like a middle aged moment where I can't remember who it is, but dang it,
oh,
somebody help me.
uh, um, Latino in AWA. Oh, geez. Mm,
I was gonna say like Hernandez was his last name, but I can't remember. But he was
hmm.
like from Texas somewhere like that. But
Are you
that's when I remember, and
Oh,
then I kind of remember him being
possibly Gino?
Gino. Yeah, bro.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Gino was
It
AWA though, right?
no, Gino never went to AWA. He was mainly WCCW and Houston wrestling. Are you
Yeah,
thinking
maybe I'm thinking,
thinking of maybe Manny
but
Fernandez, the Raging Bull?
maybe that's it.
Okay.
I'm getting the mixed up, and that's racist of me. So my bad.
Oh man, Gino Hernandez, God rest his soul, man. Oh gosh, man, he.
Manny was great though.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm definitely not taking anything away from Mandy, but Gino. I mean, he was your he was a really great heel, a really great heel. Good mouthpiece, cocky, arrogant. The guy could work, and it's a shame his life was cut so short the way it was. But anyways, we'll move on. We're gonna move on to the top two now. I definitely agree. Number two, definitely hands down needs to be on this list. Number two is Earthquake, the late John Tenta. Guys, we could probably talk about Earthquake for a damn good while. So I'll let y'all go. I know I've been starting it off with these guys, but I'll let y'all go ahead and start it off. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say a quick word because I gotta get some things done before I gotta hop off. Um, Again, Tenta's another guy, similar to what I said about Yoko, and growing up disliking the heels but never Yoko. Not the same for Tenta. I am a Hulk Hogan guy. He's the reason I watch wrestling. He's the reason I fell in love with it. He's the reason I love wrestling. Hogan is the greatest of all time. Hogan is everything. Um, and Earthquake, like his introduction and the whole angle of him like crushing Hogan and I loved that on the Brother Love show. Like looking back now, I love it. It was a great angle. It made Earthquake look dominant. It made him look fierce. Um and it's funny because we've talked about it with all these big men, right? All these big men have the heart of gold, and John Tenta was an absolute like sweetheart of a man, and everybody loved John Tenta. But yeah, yeah, I remember disliking Earthquake as a kid and just thinking like, oh god, I can't stand that guy. Like he hurt my hero type situation, you know. But I mean, yeah, I would say I can't argue with him being this high on the list. Um, Especially again, and when I got on your live to talking about working, and I mean for a big man he worked. He had an amazing power slam. He could run the ropes. He could sell like for a 400-pound big man. Earthquake could sell his ass off. And I know you guys all know this. He had this odd little squinting like facial expression where he would when he sold um his pairing with Tugboat slash Typhoon. um yeah, I am a giant fan of Earthquake, the Canadian Earthquake, the Shark, um uh the Avalanche, whatever you want to call him. Like, he was just as reliable a big man hand as you can get. um I think it's kind of funny because in nowadays, or had he come at a later time, he would have had singles titles. Like, you can easily see him as IC champ, US champ, even a world heavyweight champion. Not maybe not a WWE champ, but like a world heavyweight big gold belt champ. Yeah, I'm just a giant fan of John Tenta and the Earthquake, and I think he's as memorable a gimmick. Well, we talk a lot about gimmicks with, and obviously we always point to the Undertaker or Kane, um, whatever the case is. Earthquake. Earthquake was an amazing gimmick. It was because I guarantee you there's a good percentage of wrestling fans who don't know his name as John Tenta, who don't know him as that, but they know Earthquake. They know Earthquake. They know his time with Dino Bravo, and they know that blue. They know that blue singlet. Like, it's yeah, man. Earthquake is an absolute Hall of Famer, and um, yeah, when it comes to big men, he belongs this high on this list.
Oh,
I would
absolutely.
argue he's the archetype for like a Big Show. He's what Big Show was in the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. You know, Earthquake was his equivalent in that era. He's great. He's great all around. He's charming. He was funny. Like there's nothing bad I'm gonna say about Earthquake.
And he was a big family man, big family man, and it's really funny. Whenever I watched that Dark Side of the Ring episode that came out a couple of years ago, and his wife, seeing them stand side by side to each other. I mean, she's a teeny tiny lady, and he's this big giant, monster and stuff and all that. But yeah, I've heard so many people say he was such a sweetheart. I know Jake Roberts was very high on him, and but you Goblin, you mentioned about him destroying Hulk Hogan on the Brother Love show. Well, a year later, when he had that feud with Jake the Snake, he did the earthquake splash to Jake's bag that was supposed to hold Damien to kill off Damien, basically. And apparently rumor had it was like pantyhose stuff with like ground beef and stuff and all that to make it look legit. And and then not too long after that, back when they had that prime time wrestling, kind of like in a talk show segment, and he came out, said he was going to cook some burgers, and he cooked Quake burgers, and he said, "What animal rhymes with Quake?" And they turned out he said he cooked basically Damien and Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan ate these burgers that were supposedly snake burgers. Just good storytelling shit. But it's crazy because he would when they first brought him in, they had actually paired him with the Doctor of Style, Slick, and there was a dark match. He wrestled as Earthquake Evans, and they were basically giving him a lumberjack gimmick, kind of similar to Big Josh, what Matt Bourne had in WCW. And but oh yes, I see Goblin. Goblin had to leave. Goblin, love you, bro. Good having you on. Thank you for being here, and definitely love to have you on again. But
And
Earthquake.
you got to see what your personal list is, because I mean this, the top 10 big men, very. I don't know, when you get these personal lists, I mean these lists, it's always controversial. You're like, what the heck? Who's this person? Why does this person get over that
Right.
person? You
Right,
know.
right, and I mean, Earthquake for a guy that was he was billed at 468, and for a guy billed at that, and if he did legit weigh that, God, the guy could move. I mean, about as good as Yoko could, and I mean, heck, he was busting out drop kicks and the way he ran the ropes, and you know, whenever he would drop the elbows on people, like I remember at WrestleMania 6 after Hacksaw had defeated Dino Bravo, Earthquake came in and attacked him and he dropped some elbows on him. And then Jesse Ventura would say, "There's a 470-pound elbow. There's a second one." And then he gave him like three of those earthquake splashes and stuff and just crushed him.
Mm-hmm.
And, and even when he debuted on TV, he was a random fan they brought in to sit on Dino Bravo and Ultimate Warrior's backs when they did push-ups, and when it was Warrior's turn to do the push-up, Earthquake just did his earthquake splash on him and crushed him and stuff. I mean, what better way to debut than to knock out one of the top baby faces and stuff and make a statement? And I mean, he had a great career. He really
And he
did.
was a great athlete. If you look at his, when he did the earthquake stomp, I mean splash, and he would jump around and stomp around, he's getting good air, bro.
Oh
For a
yeah.
man his age and his height and in that era, we have all of these great athletes that we have, WWE has all the trainers, all of the supplements that you need, all of the things to make you a great athlete, like, in the ring, But this is back before that, and he was getting, a good, 6 or 7 inches every time he jumped,
Oh
which
yeah.
is crazy for
And
somebody his size.
and every time he jumped, that ring was shaking. I
Mhm.
mean, it was shaking crazily. And when he landed that splash, now I'll tell you, he was really safe with that. I mean, and just again, just that just goes to show nothing but mad respect to his work rate and stuff. And not only that, but let's mention how he was a sumo wrestler in Japan prior to
Mhm.
venturing off into the pro wrestling business. And he got out of that because I don't know much about the sumo lifestyle living, but from what I've heard, it's very demanding of the body, from what I gather. And then,
Mhm.
then he had that shoot fight with Koji Katao in Japan back in '91 and stuff. And Earthquake stood his ground, and he was about to beat the hell out of him. From what I heard, when he got back out of the ring and went to the back, he was about to beat the hell out of him. I He had a decent WCW run, but when they changed, but then they had to shift him from Avalanche to Shark because of a cease and
Mhm.
desist sent from Vince. You know, it, he didn't have as good of a run with that as he did his Earthquake, and then
Well,
you know,
and shout out to him for doing that anyway, because
absolutely,
he inspired Shark Boy.
yep.
We wouldn't have, you know, Shark Boy 316 without,
Th-
uh
this
without
is
without him.
this is very true, and honestly, I didn't even realize it as a kid, but he had that tiger tattoo, on his left arm, and then when he
Mhm.
became Shark, he actually had a shark tattoo to go over it. So I mean, he was really into the gimmick with the face paint, the tights. I mean, he was all in on it. I know he had a tag team title run in his first run with the company with WWF, but I think it would have been great to seen him hold the WWF championship, and have a good monster run heel. But uh, at the time Vince was going with Hogan and Warrior, then back to Hogan and stuff. And by this point, him and Typhoon had already, formed a tag team. One other
Mhm.
thing that he did, it was well, actually, well, no, he didn't set a precedent because Hogan set it with Warlord in the '89 Rumble, but in the '91 Rumble, when Bushwhacker Luke came out, Earthquake grabbed a hold of him, threw him right out just as quick as he got in the ring.
I love that.
That
And
was
then he committed, and he still did the strut after he got eliminated. You gotta love it.
He strutted to the ring, and then as soon as he got thrown out, strutted to the back. So yeah, that was some good stuff. And then a few months later, he attacked Andre the Giant, with Jimmy Hart's megaphone, and but was safe with him, and kind of makes you wonder what would have happened if you would have had an Andre the Giant versus Earthquake match. I mean, you know, it might not have been a Dave Meltzer 7-star match, but I mean, it would have definitely been one heck of an attraction for the fans to see. You know.
Maybe like him versus Bam Bam, him versus Vader, him versus One Man Gang. Like an Attitude Era version of One Man Gang.
Hmm.
Versus Earthquake would have been something. You
Well,
know,
well,
maybe a passing of the torch with Big Show. That would have been great.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because he did go back during the Attitude Era. Back in '98, he was a part of that Oddities, faction, and he was Golga. They put that gold mask on him and
Yeah.
stuff. The only reason I figured out it was him as a kid because he did the earthquake senton splash, seated senton splash. But what I thought was cool, he had which I don't watch South Park. I never did, but he wore the Cartman t-shirts. He also had a big old stuffed Cartman and stuff that he would wave left and right, to their theme music and stuff when they were on their babyface run. But he had a couple of other appearances as Earthquake. He showed up in the 2000. It was at WrestleMania 17. It was the gimmick battle royal, and he was a lot lighter than normal. But he did get an elimination or two, and then he did wrestle a dark match. I think it was a dark match for SmackDown in 2001, and he got a good ovation. Before the match started and after the match, he got a good ovation. But I guess Vince didn't see much with him, so and that was it for him.
What shout out to the fans for that because I think one of the great things about being a wrestling fan is we remember those type of people that bring that that awe factor when they're walking through the crowd, when they're doing their gimmicks. I mean, we do get the IWC does have a lot of people that are neurotic and hateful, but when it's the best of us, like you think about it, it's that joy of like just being a kid and having like this larger in life like spectacle like right before our eyes. And so shout out to them for respecting all that he's done for
Uh,
the
Oh,
wrestling community.
absolutely. And he actually did work Bam Bam in one match in WWF. It was on a Superstars taping back in 90, is either late 92 or early 93. And it was a decent match. I think you can find it on YouTube, but um I remember Bam Bam got the win. Earthquake went for a avalanche splash in the corner. Bam Bam ducked, and Earthquake went over the top rope and got counted out. But that's the only match that I know those two had. Now he did have some dang good matches with the Big Boss Man in WWF and even in WCW. Those two worked really well together. But yeah, you make a very valid point, Panda. I mean, ruthless, Attitude Era, One Man Gang, Big Show. I mean, that would have been quite a sight to see. But it, it sucks his life was cut short, and it's crazy to think it's actually been 20 years since he passed away. It's already been 20
you
years.
know it's crazy when you think about it. Like we've been fans since we were little. It's just like eh, you know eh, yeah, 20 years. Rest in peace to him, and shout out to his family that by all accounts, he was a Hall of Fame father. So that's
Oh,
that's great.
absolutely. Now, if I'm not mistaken, his oldest son, I think he actually adopted him, if I remember correctly from the Dark Side of the Ring episode and stuff. But yeah, but no, I know all three of his kids really loved him. His wife, to my knowledge, she never moved. She didn't marry anybody else and stuff. So
When you feel the aftershocks of the earthquake, there's no one better.
One other thing about Earthquake I liked was whenever he was doing an interview or a promo, he was always bouncing around to the left and to the right, kind of like what Brock Lesnar would does whenever he comes to the entranceway and stuff. So I always thought that was some good stuff. But we'll move on to number one, and I got to
Number one.
number one, The man they call Vader.
No, I saw a lot of the younger guys here like, on TikTok. They poo poo on Vader, and they haven't seen, Japan Vader. They didn't see the Great Mastodon, with that big, huge, heavy, metal Mastodon mask and the spray and the larger than life. They didn't get to see like, a man his size doing moonsaults and just just getting his butt whipped by like Sting and the man was great. You know,
Oh gosh, yeah. Now,
he was a great actor too. Because shout out to Boy Meets World because he was awesome. Me and you, Finster in the death match.
oh my gosh, that was one man that should have had a well, supposedly he was going to have a run with the WW at the time WWF championship belt, but apparently Shawn Michaels killed that for him. And you know, I think, and this is just my opinion, when he went to WWF, he left WCW on bad terms. You know, he had the infamous backstage fight with Paul Orndorff that a lot of people know about. If you don't know, to the listeners, there is an old tale back in '95, back when Paul Orndorff, the late Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, was not only wrestling, but he was also like a backstage agent or whatever. And supposedly it was time for Vader to do some promos or promo pics or something. And Vader kept saying, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. Now, according to Jim Cornette, Orndorff said, Vader, you fat fuck, let's go. And then apparently that pissed Vader off. And I think Vader face palmed him. And then something lit up in Orndorff, and then Orndorff allegedly beat the hell out of Vader and was supposedly kicking him with the shower sandals that he was wearing or pool sandals. I don't know. But needless to say, Vader wasn't around much longer after that because he was supposed to be in the '95 War Games match on Hogan's team against the Dungeon of Doom. Well, then he was
Mm.
gone, and then he got replaced by Lex Luger. And with that being said, then he comes to WWF. He has a great debut. You know, starts off very dominant. He beats up the late Gorilla Monsoon. Vader bombs him and stuff and all that. Is showing he's a monster heel. He breaks Yokozuna's leg via Vader bomb, and Yoko had to be carted out via forklift. Then he has his match with Shawn Michaels. Okay, well, I guess Shawn didn't do his homework on Vader because Vader works stiff or strong style. Okay. And apparently Shawn didn't like that too much. And then we
I
all
mean,
know,
hands off the merchandise. You don't sell merch. With black eyes. On the dolls. So he should have been a little bit more careful.
well, and and I watched that Dark Side of the Ring episode on Vader that came out last year, and we all know he hurt that one guy pretty badly. Um, I saw some of the matches he had with some of the enhancement fellas, and I don't want to say he abused them. I'm not saying that, but he was pretty rough on them. Uh, well, but anyways, get back to the match with Michaels. He was supposed to move out of the way of that elbow drop. Vader didn't move. Now, if Shawn was, and I'm not knocking the man now. I know Shawn changed his ways. Good for him. I'm happy for him. But at that time, what Shawn should have done was just deliver the elbow and went with it because that's the wrestling business. Things happen. You just got to roll with the punches. Unfortunately, when Shawn pulled that little stunt, it made him look bad. It made Vader look really bad. And then, of course, there's the whole thing where Vader didn't, he wouldn't wash his gear. Supposedly, he complained. And then, of course, he got in trouble with Kuwait, which Panda, you know all about that. Folks, if you're not familiar with that, go to YouTube. There is a video clip of Vader and the Undertaker back when Taker was the WWF champion. They're on a talk show in Kuwait, and the talk show host asks basically something about wrestling being fake, and then Vader. It's really funny. He's wearing his mask, but he's dressed up in a polo shirt, khaki pants, and he's wearing tennis shoes. Well, he
I love it. Like if it worked for Blue Demon and he made like 300 movies in Mexico, why not Vader?
there you go. Well, he didn't like the question about wrestling being called fake, so he grabs a hold of that guy of the Kuwait talk show host, and eventually Vader gets put on house arrest, so he can't leave the country. So that didn't do him any favors. And then eventually, I think he was wanting a lighter schedule, and then of course they didn't really do much with him. I mean, that they had the mask match between him and Kane at Over the Edge '98, and he made the infamous, I'm just a big fat piece of shit. He wasn't around much longer. Probably a few months later, he got released. But supposedly, he went back to Japan and had another great career and stuff. But yeah, but getting back to his work
There was a
rate,
lot of lost potential right there. There was a lot of matches that were left on the table, and like he deserved a little bit better than he got. But then politics aside, and just things clash. Sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And but he was definitely up there as a big man talent. Like he inspired a lot of people. You think about like people that do the Vader bomb, even guys like what is his name? Keith Lee, and then you have guys like
hmm
the other guy, he kind of looks like a big AJ Styles, he had a feud with Keith Lee for a while in TNA. I mean in NXT. But like so many people, like they love Vader. I mean some people just know him from, Boy Meets World. He was great, he's just
yeah,
he was an awesome guy. So I
they
wish it would have seen him in bigger matches.
well, and at the '97 Royal Rumble, he had a singles match with Taker. He beat Taker. And I mean, Taker's one of the foundation wrestlers of that company. At that point, he's the guy. Um, and then I watched his match with Kane at that he had at No Way Out in 1998 when Kane took the wrench and hit Vader over the face with it. Um, it was made to look Kane look strong, obviously going into his Mania match that they had planned with Taker, but Vader worked that match really good. He worked good selling. He worked good with his comeback, and heck, he power bombed Kane. He did the moonsault. Folks, if you haven't seen a Vader moonsault, please give that a good look. But and let's go back a few years earlier. His match with Ron Simmons. When Ron Simmons
That was a wonderful.
it was, and then the matches he had with Sting, and here's the thing, like, there was one match he had with Sting, and it wasn't for the belt. I want to say it was just a rematch they had at a pay per view. It might have been the '92 Starcade, maybe, but Vader went to the top and he flipped over. Sting caught him with a power slam and pinned him. I mean,
That the one where they had in the beginning it had that kind of uh what's that TV show on HBO that he's like it had a Harley race, and he had some white like furry thing on the top of his shoulders for some reason.
oh,
It felt very of that type. He's like, you know I am fear. And they had, for some reason, they had snow and all kinds of, like, the hype of it was awesome, bro.
it was the White Castle of Fear.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I
But
mean, honestly, I mean, in your opinion, Colonel Parker, Harley Race, or Cornette, which one did better with Vader?
oh, dang. Hmm.
Because I think having Harley Race, with him in WWE would have been a big, would have been a big thing. It would have been awesome. You know what I mean?
Uh, I think Cornette did really good with him in WWF, but I will agree with you. I think Harley Race might have been better. The only problem is Vince was probably more likely not going to go for that. But
Mhm.
I think it would have worked a little better because I mean, hell, Harley Race is a fucking legend in this business. I mean,
Yeah.
shit. I mean, he's one of the few guys that Andre the Giant was afraid of. He's also the guy that stood up to Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody in a tag match in Japan when they were trying to take liberties with him. I mean, he held his ground. I mean, Harley Race is a fucking legend, but he's also a very well respected wrestler. But yeah,
I always think of when Ric Flair says, "To be the man, you got to beat the man," and he had to beat the man, and that was Harley Race to be,
yep.
to get that respect. And Harley Race had that one wonderful thing where he didn't have to, be boisterous. That classic '80s thing where, like I summoned the demons from hell and hall. He didn't do any of that. Like he talked really like, very, like um distinct, and like he was very on topic, but it made you think, man, this guy's gonna brutalize whoever he's gonna face,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
well, can I ask you, where was um Gorilla Monsoon on the list?
You know, he was not on this list, which really
All right,
surprised
this
me.
this list is not legitimate anymore. Grace, you got to make your own list,
I
I'm
really
sorry, but this
I really should have. Yeah. Like I said, this is just an opinion on the list, but yeah, Monsoon definitely should have made the list. It's definitely a shame. He definitely should have been at least number 9. Um,
they don't even have Bobo Brazil, or I mean not Bobo Brazil, but like they don't have Big Baba on there in the top 10.
well,
This
well,
is a ridiculous list.
Bubba. Now here's the thing. I referenced that tag match that he and Akeem had against the Rockers, and there was a spot in the match when and this is when Boss Man was still sort of new to the Federation. He goes up to the top turnbuckle, and you hear Monsoon saying, "That's 400 pounds plus up there," And I don't know what his weight was. I know he got down to 330 something.
Hmm?
That's when he was slimming down, but he had to have been 400. And I know Bam Bam was weighing in at 400, when he came back for his second run with the company. And it really shocked me that he didn't make this list. So I
And
was,
you know what, low key, if you have a chance, go on YouTube, like watch Bubba Rogers versus Vader. That is like some just big, like just meat, big manly men slapping man meat. It is one of those ones where you're just like, this is what pro wrestling is, for like it, encapsulating the '80s. Just big, huge, larger than life figures just beating the hell out of each other. Good old boys just beating the hell out of each other.
well, and I'll throw another one in there, because we mentioned Japan and I mentioned Stan Hansen, but for the fans that are not familiar, look up Stan Hansen versus Vader in I believe it was All Japan when Hansen hit him so hard that Vader's eyeball popped out and Vader popped it back in its socket.
Mhm.
And you could see the swelling after Vader took his mask off and stuff and all that. But hey, props to Vader. I mean that he finished out that match, and it wasn't like a minute or so later. It was like a good 10 minutes after that injury happened and stuff. And he was viewed as a really nice guy. He wasn't like a bully backstage or anything, but I guess like King Kong Bundy, he spoke his mind or said what was on his mind, and they didn't like that. But it also didn't help that he didn't wash his gear. You know.
You know, yeah, true. But you know what's funny is low key is like I always think when you make these lists, we should think about like the man's athleticism, right? Their move set, their charm, the aura that they create in the ring, with their partners and everything. But one of the things that people don't see that Vader actually had a hand in is getting somebody like Mick Foley seen by the WWE, because his feud in WCW with Mick Foley gave people that respect where people are like, this guy's crazy, this guy's amazing, you know,
Yeah.
and so that Mick Foley could be in the like in that talk to have him come up on there,
Right.
so
Right.
I mean
Yeah.
he made people.
Oh, absolutely. And Sting was already made at this point, but I think Vader helped Sting go to the next level. In regards
You
to
know
who
what?
he could
I
work
I
with.
still watch that match with Sting just put like just the welts on Vader's skin when he's hitting them with the strap, in that strap match.
Hmm.
It looks just like this big walrus is just getting whipped up. It's just you know and I mean he was the size of a human manatee. But he was amazing. He was really nice, and I mean, low key, he probably deserves to be, at least, two or three. I wouldn't say one, but I would have thought Andre would have been one. But like, respect to, this is their opinion. We need the Grizzly Caves top 10, or top 25,
Well,
some legitimate, top
well,
five,
I wouldn't just leave it to. I would just say top 10 big men. I would do
Mhm.
that because I'd be throwing in guys like Taker and Kane, Braun Strowman. Bam Bam. I'd even throw
Do you consider them a big man in the sense, like, how like Brock is a powerhouse, right?
right.
You have your powerhouse, you have your big man. Like, do you split the category where you have like, because they're more. I mean, they're more have a traditional body, and they're tall, right?
Right, right.
Where like these guys are big. Like you have this, like, Big Show. He's a legitimate 7'4", and I mean, he played for Kansas, right? He's a basketball player. Like, you have all these guys. Like, where would you put like Kane and Undertaker? Because I mean, Kane in his prime, his biceps are huge, bro. Like, I would say
Oh
he's a
yeah.
powerhouse. He would be considered a I mean, and people say like he was legitimately one of the strongest people, like, in the company.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because because we're on the topic of Vader. When they made a big deal about Kane tombstoning Vader, which that is a big deal because that's a big boy. But
Mhm.
Undertaker did that exact same feat a year a year earlier. So it's not unknown. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
now the only reason I would rank Taker, well, for starters, that's my guy. That's my favorite one. But but as agile as this man, I mean, for a guy that height to be that agile, that quick, and also
Mhm.
walk the rope like the spoiler Don Jardine, to walk the rope like that, to do that old school move of his, and I mean, but now if we're gonna go with heavyweights and stuff like that instead of tall guys like Taker and Kane, I would throw Braun Strowman in there because he was a huge beast when he first debuted with the Wyatt family 11 years ago. But I would also put Bam Bam in there because, like Vader, me personally, Bam Bam had a better moonsault than Vader did. I think he got a lot more air. But
Mhm.
I'd also throw Big Boss Man in there because Boss Man, he
Yeah,
was
but
agile.
Bubba Rogers, like, to me, he'd be in the top five. Like, if you just look at his body of work and like how he moved, especially those cage matches he had at, like, Saturday night's main event. Like,
Hmm.
he made them look like $1 million, and he didn't have to.
And how many guys that size do you see busting out enziguri kicks?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But but yeah, Vader, yeah, he was God Almighty, he was a beast. He was or as they wanted to call him in WWF, a mastodon. I really, I, he was supposed to have a run with the belt. That's the crazy thing. Allegedly, according to Bruce Pritchard, and I didn't get to say this when Goblin was still on, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. But to honor this one thing of Bruce Pritchard, fuck Dave Meltzer. But with that being said,
Yeah,
the original plan was Vader was supposed to take the belt off Shawn because they had the SummerSlam '96 match. They were supposed to have a rematch at Survivor Series, the one where Sid won, and Vader was supposed to win that match, and then he would eventually drop the belt back to Shawn at the '97 Rumble. That was the original plan because uh, I want. I can't remember which pay per view it was. I want to say it was either no, it was the December In Your House pay per view that was after the '96 Survivor Series. It was literally called "It's Time." It was already booked ahead of time. That was the plan, but that one incident at the SummerSlam match, and then obviously Shawn not liking Vader working stiff, that killed it for him. It's just like you mentioned earlier about the politics and bullshit. Vader could have had a better. He didn't have a bad career there, but it wasn't what it should have been. But With that being
I mean, he
said,
probably should have played. He probably should have played ball. Like some, like so. When you're a big guy, you can, like like I do jujitsu, bro. Like if I wanted to, I could just, like manhandle people, but you don't. You take care of them. You make sure that they're safe. It probably would have, um, made sure that he had more longevity. But
sure,
people are who they are. And they're part of that personality and that that kind of attitude is a lot to do with his charm. He had that kind of, that it factor that was just that you don't know what he's gonna do, bro. He was, he had that, so it made him more of a monster, but also it made him, you know, uh, hated by people like Shawn Michaels.
right. And I don't know if this is still on YouTube, but I haven't listened to it in a long time. But there was a mashup video. They took Vader's WWF theme music, it's time, and they mashed it up with Demolition's theme performed by Rick Derringer. It's pretty badass. I don't know if it's still up there, but if it is, give it a listen to. That's some good shit. And I'm not gonna lie,
Vader.
go ahead,
But
go ahead, buddy.
no, I said Vader is one of those guys that you know I would have loved to see him as a Marvel character. Like because when you think about like the Fantastic Four,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and Vader, it's a no brainer, bro. It's time. You could have just said it's clobber inside. He would have made it, bro. He's awesome.
It's funny you mentioned that because eventually that's what CM Punk wound up going on to say. That especially during his his big era of Punk run back in 2011 to 2013 and stuff and all that. But yeah, that would have been perfect. That'd have been perfect for Vader. I don't know why Vince didn't pull the trigger on that, but who knows? Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Grizzly's Cave. I know he's already left, but I do want to thank Exhausted Goblin for joining us, and Jujitsu Panda. Thank you very much for being on the show. It was an honor and a
Oh,
privilege
bro,
to have you.
anytime I can, be with one of the, the best in the business, I got you, man. Respect to you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I got nothing but mad respect for you too, bud. And folks, thank you again for listening to this episode of Grizzly's Cave. For Jujitsu Panda, I am Grizzly Andrew signing off, saying take care and God bless.